Jason. I am currently trying to be a successful independent musician. I've been a musician for nearly 3 decades and done function work, session work, original bands, all sorts. But I've also had to get a day job, which I did for over 20 years because my parents told me to. And I did my mental health nurse training, which I completed in the year 2000, and worked for all that time up until 2 years ago as a mental health practitioner in different forms and different guises, working with many individuals with mental health problems directly, usually visiting them at home or running clinics. I used to teach mental health at the Uni of Nottingham, and mental health was very much my career, my life, my whole world, really, especially as I often suffered from difficulties myself. Um, I made the decision 2 years ago to completely change careers and try and do the music thing because that was the original dream when I was 16. Um, and as I did so, I felt, well, it would be a shame to not continue my passion in trying to help people and trying to reach out to people with my many years of kind of appreciation and knowledge of mental health issues. Why not try and combine the two? Now, if anybody looks at my socials, and I mean, most of it's daft, I'm not going to lie, and you probably won't find it because I've got a silly surname, but if you do, you'll probably find that I haven't really written much about mental health. And the reason for that is, should we talk about mental health? Well, I think, if you look at what's happening and the trends of how musicians are really increasing in their numbers in terms of people talking about mental health, coming out, so to speak, and self-disclosing their own issues. Um, I think the amount of people suffering from mental health problems out there is still huge. The amount of stigma that's out there is exactly the same as it was in 1997 when I started my training. It really hasn't changed. Huge problem. It kind of stems from the old ideas where people who had mental health problems back in the olden days would be kind of considered as being possessed by demons, and there's this sort of real lingering kind of negative perception of mental illness, this fear, and it can lead to sort of direct abuse and bullying, but it can also lead to institutional levels of discrimination, for example, affecting employability. Mariah Carey was quoted as saying that she really feared talking about her own bipolar illness because she thought it might affect her career. And this is Mariah Carey, who's like about as high up in the showbiz ladder as you can get. There was a Music Industry Research Association survey in 2018 said that 73% of independent musicians have suffered from stress, anxiety, or depression, and the current stats for the general population are more around 25%. So we as musicians have an intrinsic relationship with mental health, mental illness. So there is definitely a trend of people talking about it. But the reason why I haven't started doing it yet is because I immediately thought, oh crap, this is huge. This is a big thing to do. It's a very brave thing to do. I was talking to a very good, very talented beatboxer called SK Shlomo, and he told me how he had thousands and thousands of followers leave him on social media as soon as he started talking about mental health problems, his own stories, namely. And he also got huge amounts of amazingly horrible abuse online and vitriol as soon as he started talking about his own experiences. So the risks of doing this, the risks of putting yourself out there, being open and honest with everybody and saying, yeah, I've suffered too. Let's have a conversation. Let's reach out to people who are vulnerable. Let's, as good as your intentions may be, I was rather afraid of the risks, and I think I had an insight into when I was working as a mental health practitioner, the amount of protection I had to help me deal with the stuff I was hearing in my job, but also deal with, the stigma of the job that is no longer here with me now as an independent musician. I don't have that protection. So the question is, should we talk about mental health? Well, yeah, I think we really should. I think the more people talking about it, the better. Like I say, stigma is still a huge issue. Many people out there feeling isolated, alone, don't know who to talk to. And I know a lot of people who, sign up to do courses in music, of course, have an interest, have a passion in mental health. As I scour social media, I see amount of musicians talking about it now. Loads of people are really passionate about doing this. So I asked the question, well, what can I do to sort of support people and help people in terms of their journeys in incorporating mental health awareness and challenging stigma into their own brands as artists. And so, with a little help from Toby, I have to give him credit because his mind works differently to mine. Mine generally shuts down quite often and quite suddenly, but his is very alert, and he helped me generate some ideas. If you're interested in embarking on integrating mental health awareness, sharing your own story maybe, or listening to other people's stories, if you're interested in doing that and put it into your own branding, then I've looked at 4 specific areas within which you can like follow as a guide. A lot of this was based around some of the research I did for my master's dissertation, which I'm still sweating from because it's quite fresh. But the four pillars, shall we say? Let's get cheesy. The 4 pillars of this. The first one being genuineness and authenticity, and this is a great, completely unrehearsed link to some of the stuff that Adam was saying. We need to be honest and genuine. We need to be talking from a position of truth. There has to be an alignment between what you intend to do or what you say your intention is and what your action is. If we're going to talk about mental health, if we're going to do these things, we have to do it genuinely. If we say to people we are genuinely concerned about how you're feeling, we have to be genuinely concerned about how people are feeling. Because if people are opening up to us, we don't want to betray their trust. For them, it might be a huge thing that they're doing to send a little message to your Instagram page or what other social medias. I'm too old for this, to be honest. They might write you a letter, I don't know. But what they may say to you is very personal and might have taken a lot of guts. And they might have only done that because you said something about mental health in your post. And then for you to not show them some kind of reciprocation or some validation for what they've done could be a betrayal. So we need to be very careful of that. Obviously, the strongest brands are built on authenticity and genuineness. You want to make, you have to show that you genuinely want to make the world a better place. And the strongest brands have done that. People will connect to you more, but you have to see it through. I think it can be dangerous if you don't. The second pillar, which is a nice lead on really, is the safety and well-being side of things. And I'm not just talking about the well-being of the people who are following us, but also the well-being of ourselves. We need to be aware of the risks that you can find yourself in when talking about mental health. And the key point of this really is self-awareness. We have an interest in talking about mental health probably because we have experienced it ourselves, or we have some passion because we know a family member who has experienced it. Many of us have lost people to suicide. Many of us have experienced growing up with a family member who has quite significant mental health issues. We're going to have triggers. We're going to have sensitivity. If we're going to talk about things and have people talk to us about things, we need to make sure we can deal with that. We need to think about the boundaries that we put in there and the rules to make sure that we don't get over involved. And I can only sort of recount people telling me how they've had people talk to them online and said that they're going to take their own lives that night. Now, when I worked in the job, I had that told to me every day, and it didn't get any easier. So if you're not prepared for that and you've never done the training and the years of experience that I had working in the field, that's going to hurt you, and you're going to not sleep, and it's going to have a huge effect on your mental state. I think it's really important that we can find some way of putting some support in place for each other and look after ourselves. And that leads me on to the third one. Yeah, it's almost like I've planned it. Community. How can we protect ourselves? How can we put in place safeguards so when we start talking about things, or people start talking about things with us, that there is support and there is something there so that people aren't alone? And it has to be community. Research was done into gaming communities of all things, and gaming channels on YouTube, and where the gamers involved start talking about their own issues, as many do. The communities rally round and become kind of like a network. So rather than the artist having to take responsibility for saying something supportive to somebody who's struggling on a forum, everyone else does it. It's a shared thing. It's an absolute shared thing. I did forget to say that on the safety thing. Obviously, we need to make sure we put links to formal support so that there's so that there's ways of safeguarding ourselves and others. But the community could be a good way of putting people together in order to help protect them and offer advice and support and make people feel less alone. Social isolation is a huge issue. I'm going to try to stop waffling. I've got to cram this in. Um, if you think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which you might have heard of, at the very bottom of it, you've got your physiological needs. You need food and water to survive. Next, you need safety, shelter, somewhere to live, somewhere to feel safe. But only one step above that comes love and belonging. You need to feel that you belong. It is an innate human need. And many people who suffer from mental health problems often feel alone, isolated, lonely. So a community can be a really good way of addressing that for people who want to reach out and talk about their own mental health stories. But also for us as musicians, we can network with other musicians who are also doing the same. So if you do have that difficult conversation with somebody, you've got a group of people to turn to and say, I had a really difficult conversation today. Can I have a cry? People to be there for you. And the fourth one, a really, really important one, and one I'm really passionate about, is language, mental health language. How many people on social media say, "Oh, I've had a crazy mental week," "Oh, my mate went skits when he found out." All these things. "Oh, he was psycho." We say these things in the same way that we often use the word gay, in a derogatory way, or it's the same kind of thing. It happens with people who suffer from mental health issues. It can be very, very alienating. We often have the whole stigma and memes around emos and self harm, and it's frankly dangerous for teen angst to be played down and ridiculed when actually it stems from real pain and real vulnerable people. And yet, a lot of social media profiles or a lot of way people speak online or in person, we use these words without thinking. But they can alienate people and they can put people in vulnerable positions. So really, the last one really is about positive language and promoting awareness of how we speak. So, what would be the take home from me waffling and ranting on about it and going over my time probably? It is really, really important to raise awareness, and I'm really, really pleased if there's any of you out there who want to do this, and any of you who want to talk about mental health. It's a really good thing that you're doing, a very brave thing that you're doing, but don't take it lightly. Before we wade into trying to help others, how are we going to protect ourselves? Are we truly ready for it, or can we do more? Thank you very much.